tactics sound downright Bushian, though executed well into the Obama administration. And the message to an Army private allegedly responsible for the biggest Wikileaks revelations to date is simple. If you try to be a whistleblower exposing the lies of war, then a kind of war will rain down on you. In our fourth story, the soldier awaiting trial has been held for several months, 7 months rather, in solitary confinement, a condition that many experts and nations view as torture or nearly so. Army Intelligence Private First Class Bradley Manning, believed to be the source for WikiLeaks' most high-profile releases earlier this year, has been held for 7 months in solitary. This according to Salon.com, citing several people directly familiar with Manning's detention, as well as a Quantico Brig official, Lieutenant Brian Villiard, who confirmed much of it. Specifically, Manning has been detained at the U.S. Marine Brig in Quantico for 5 months, and for 2 months before that in a military jail in Kuwait. He has been designated a maximum custody detainee, despite reportedly being a model prisoner, exhibiting no signs of violence, under no suicide watch. Manning, nonetheless, spends 23 out of every 24 hours alone in his cell. This has been true for 7 months. He is prohibited from exercising in that cell, strictly monitored and enforced. He is denied prison basics like a pillow and sheets. Medical personnel administer antidepressants regularly to prevent Manning from mentally deteriorating due to the effects of such isolation. As Salon also noted, many reputable experts equate solitary confinement with torture, and a 2006 bipartisan commission on U.S. prisons recommended the elimination of prolonged solitary confinement, which it deemed as torturous conditions. The recent hysteria over WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange throws a new spotlight on Manning's alleged leaks, even if details of his incarceration had not, because of what Manning allegedly provided to an ex-hacker, which eventually made its way to WikiLeaks, including this video from July 12, 2007, ostensibly filmed from one of 2 Apache helicopters searching for insurgents in Baghdad. But according to The Guardian, the aircrew falsely claims to have encountered a firefight. A dozen people on the ground are killed, including 2 Iraqis working for the Reuters news agency. In July of this year, WikiLeaks released other information reputedly connected to Manning, the Afghan war logs. The New York Times called that an unvarnished, ground-level picture of the war in Afghanistan that is, in many respects, more grim than the official portrayal. Bradley Manning faces charges of unlawfully transferring classified material to a non-secure computer and to an unauthorized third party. A spokesman for Manning's defense fund tells CBS News that Manning's trial is far from beginning. The Army must complete a psychological evaluation first, and Manning's defense and prosecutors can't agree on who is to conduct that evaluation. Let's turn now to former FBI agent and whistleblower Colleen Rowley. Thanks for your time tonight, Ms. Rowley.
Thank you.
What is the significance, do you think, of solitary confinement for this particular detainee, Private Manning?
Well, I can tell you in my 24 years as an FBI investigator and 13 years teaching FBI agents criminal procedure, I've never heard of punishing someone pre-conviction like this in solitary confinement. It really sounds vindictive, and in a way, it seems like some of the harsh interrogation tactics have kind of bled over now into the criminal process, which is just shocking.
The devil's advocate question was what Manning allegedly did materially different from what you did? Were his alleged actions different from what WikiLeaks did because of the oath that he took and his duty to the U.S. military?
Well, I've had a chance, to meet many other whistleblowers, and of course a famous one, Daniel Ellsberg. And I think what Bradley Manning did is on all fours with what Daniel Ellsberg did in leaking. Actually, Ellsberg leaked higher classified documents than even Bradley Manning. So I think, if you look at shooting the messenger, this phenomenon, that's exactly what happens in almost all of these cases. It's the same old thing.
Is there any important distinction to be made between WikiLeaks and what is sort of collectively ascribed journalism, particularly considering that either kind of thing is often accused of essentially treason when it gets too close to the truth by one of the relevant governments?
Well, again, if you go back to the Pentagon Papers, you will see 19 newspapers defying the president's orders at the time, Nixon, who actually tried to shut down the newspapers for publishing classified information. Our Supreme Court said, no, that's the First Amendment right. I see all the time that there is information, even in today's New York Times, there's classified information that was leaked. And so I really don't see a distinction that matters between mainstream media and what WikiLeaks is doing.
Yeah, if we issued licenses, that would be one thing, but we don't issue licenses. Anybody can be a journalist. Are you disappointed You mentioned what the Nixon administration tried to do. You're disappointed about how effectively the Obama administration has been either browbeat into retaining or employing practices that are reminiscent of some of the worst aspects of the Bush administration?
Well, I and many other whistleblowers were very disappointed because Obama campaigned on protecting whistleblowers. He promised that he would enact whistleblower protection. There is a bill right now that I think has passed the Senate, but it still contains no protection for someone in the FBI or 16 intelligence agencies. And he's also prosecuting whistleblowers who blew the whistle on Bush's illegal actions, if you remember the warrantless monitoring. So that very much cuts across what he promised, and it's very disappointing to see this type of repression on the media.
Is there any relationship, to your experience, between the amount of reaction from the total number of governments relative to the comparable truth of what has been whistle-blown, what has been released by somebody like Assange?
Well, the comparison, of course, Wikileaks has released a lot of documents, but they have not all been published, and he is working with mainstream press. So again, I think it's quite responsible. In my case, my memo leaked on its own. It was not my own intention to have it leaked, but once it got into the papers, it was my sole protection. I didn't realize that in the government there really was no whistleblower protection.
Colleen Rowley, the FBI whistleblower, thank you for that, and thank you for your time tonight. The news from the Arizona death panels of Governor Jan Brewer had been uniformly grim until today brought the story of Carlos Olivas, Jr. He is raising money to try to fill the role that Arizona's Medicaid said it would fill for a man you know who needs a liver transplant, Francisco Felix. A week from Friday, Carlos turns 13. He'll join us.